On this particular evening she stood outside her door smiling and talking to her little dog. She greeted us warmly and asked about my mother's health. She was also the first person that day to mention the Supreme Director's speech. She praised Marshall and the party very eloquently. Of course, she was no actual fan of the regime, but she knew how to play the game. Someone could always be listening after all. Both Tom and I offered our contributions. The three of us looked at each other in that knowing way before we bid Hilda a good night. Tom and I had our routine. We would talk quietly and quickly as we took off our clothes. We knew each other very well. I could tell if something was bothering him, and knew how to draw his concerns out. He seemed a little on edge tonight, as was understandable. I was too, but that soon melted away as we got between the sheets. We kissed softly and passionately. I let my hands wander down to his intimate area, where I found he was hard. He stroked my face, as he often did, and we gazed into each other. Love is intoxicating and dangerous. We made love face to face, as was our preference. We tried not to make excessive noise, which wasn't always easy. After showering together, we shared one final loving embrace before I went on my way. My heart was light as I walked home. I was fulfilled as only a lover could be. I returned home to find Mother was asleep and snoring. I arranged my clothes in order for the morning and went to bed. I drifted off, thinking of him. It was a Saturday morning, and not long after dawn had broken, I sat next to my vegetable patch, thinking about recent happenings. Over the preceding days, there had been plenty of broadcast talk about the initial successes the police and intelligence services were having, tracking down traitors, who were often referred to as counter-revolutionary regressives. These successes were largely attributed to the information pouring in from loyal citizens of Pretania. According to the Patriot Times, good folks were coming forward to do their part in fighting sinister agents. On the television, in news broadcasts, the same basic narrative was forwarded, but with greater menace. The police were said to be just around the corner. The eyes and ears of Pride and Homeland could see and hear everything that went on, one might imagine. No specific details were given, but we were assured that arrests had been made, and the enemies of Pretania could not hide from the forces of righteousness. Mother didn't really watch the news, but she would often listen to me when I took the time to explain the latest developments. Her mind was perhaps not what it once was, but she understood what was going on. The other day she spoke of Brana, and I imagined what might have become of her in a different political environment. I suppose she could have gone on to do very well for herself had fate dealt her a kinder hand. She certainly had the tools to be a winner: drive, determination, focus, intelligence, compassion, and good humour. What good did it do, though, to think about such things? Mother told me once that this oppressive order would burn in flames one day. The powers that be have already sown the seeds of their own destruction, she said. I believe this to be true, not simply because I wish it to be, but because it's reasonable to hold this belief. Pride and Homeland must have made many powerful adversaries abroad. They had isolated the country with their xenophobia. They had dehumanized peoples from many parts of the world, a land which was once open and friendly, a member of the international system of trade and diplomacy. A land by another name was now a closed society. Pretania had built up its walls, and many of its inhabitants had hardened their hearts. One of the most disturbing aspects of society today was the behaviour of our young people, teenagers who were not yet adults. these older boys and girls could be regularly seen in junior military uniforms marching about the place as part of their Youths United groups. They would fly the party banner and sing their government-approved songs in full voice. One would sometimes overhear their chattering. These kids were fanatics. The doctrines of pride and homeland were beyond question for these youths. They were part of a holy mission. The truth had an absolute standard. To question the truth was a treacherous act. Those who opposed the party were opposed to God himself. It followed that those who opposed that which is pure and good were evil. The party was doing the Lord's work in striking down the wicked. The concept of legitimate opposition was completely alien to these children, and that's what they were, children. These would be the future guardians of sovereign Pretania, a new generation of fanatics with no memory of the free and messy land which went before their police state. The eyes of a thoroughly indoctrinated child were truly terrifying. It was a Monday when I received 2 letters from the office of our local commander. The first one looked familiar. I opened it up and found what I expected. This was the annual invitation to attend the Communities Together event. Attendance was mandatory for those who didn't have a valid excuse. These events would be held in many locations all around Pretania on the same day. Our community get-together took place on a farmland just over a mile north of town. It had become tradition for people to walk or be carried up to the fields. At these affairs, folks could trade fruit, vegetables, homemade clothes, or humble works of art. There was a small cattle market which drew a little crowd of middle-aged men. There were a few fair games for the children to play. Folks would walk about, shaking hands, greeting each other warmly, exhibiting that community spirit that the party was often banging on about. Later in the day, important officials would show up, accompanied by police guards, and there would be a series of speeches. Most of these tended to be bland and generic, but sometimes you would hear an official break into a rant about degenerates and the eternal need to root out and crush nefarious elements. This kind of speech would receive the loudest applause, of course. This event was to take place on the coming Friday. The other letter didn't appear familiar. The address was handwritten. I opened it up and looked over the page. I had to sit down sharply before I fell. I tried to gather myself before reading it. A cauldron of raw feelings was swimming within me. Could it truly be her after all these years? Rage, sadness, and hope clouded my mind. I resolved to focus on the words and try to take it in slowly. The letter read, "Dear Mum and Shane, I was recently informed of Father's passing. I received the news with true heartfelt sorrow. He was truly a decent man who will be remembered for all the right reasons. One day we will be reunited in heaven. I wish I could have attended the funeral. I wish I could have been with my beloved family all these years, but I understand why this was not possible. The revolution did what it had to do to safeguard the people and the nation. I'm proud to say that I have been fully corrected and now accept complete responsibility for my past criminal behavior. With a happy heart, I can now write the words you have no doubt waited a long time to hear. I am to be released within the next few days. In their wisdom, the authorities have decided to return me to you, my beloved mother and my dear brother. I'm coming home. I have been given a second chance to prove myself to the rightful and proper government of sovereign Pretania. It is my most heartfelt desire that I should not let my family and my wonderful country down. God bless pride and homeland. Looking forward to seeing you soon. Your daughter, your sister, Rana. When I sat Mother down and prepared her for the news, she seemed worried, as one might naturally expect. As I began to read the letter, she appeared horrified, but as I finished and looked at her again, her expression had changed to one of puzzlement. I handed her the letter so she could read the words herself. I sat down beside her and we shared silence for a while. "Will it really be our Brana?" she finally asked. I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know exactly when she would be arriving either. I was excited and brimming with fear. I was deeply concerned for Mother's health given this fresh shock. She was still mourning the passing of her husband. I worried that all this might be too much for her to bear, but I was determined to hide my anxiety from her. This wouldn't be easy, as I would have to keep a close eye on her. Later that day, in the evening, I would open up to Tom about the letter and the coming return of my sister. I sobbed as he held me in his arms. The release made me feel better, but only for a little while. I thought maybe I should go and see the local commander to get some more information, but then decided against it. I resolved to wait and see what would come next. Communities Together played out as expected for the most part until the end of the event. Party higher-ups delivered speech after speech echoing the words of their masters in recent broadcasts. But the event didn't conclude here as it usually did. We were treated to more than oratory this year. The local commander, William Bullock, took to the stage to announce that we would be privileged to watch a short film. People looked at each other, some looking puzzled, others excited. A projector and various equipment were put together swiftly by Youths United recruits as people stood around unsure of what to do with themselves. Some took their cue from Bullock, walking around in little circles, smiling and greeting folks. Others just looked around nervously. Within 15 minutes of the announcement, the film had started. It showed some of the ruins around the capital city towards the end of the Civil War. A younger Marshal was shown, looking over the devastated site of what was Parliament. Then some pre-revolution footage was shown. An old gambling hall full of men was seen. Next came what must have been an old red light district. The film shifted to the modern day. Conservatively dressed boys and girls walk into school surrounded by beautiful countryside. Clean city streets full of police officers were accompanied by a triumphant musical score. And of course, Sunday services were displayed as the centerpiece of the new order. The churches were full, as faith had returned to the people's hearts. The film narrator explained that the light of God is within all of Pretania's good citizens. But without guidance and the strong hand of righteous leadership, people are always in danger of falling into darkness. Marshall had shown us the way, and we should remain steadfast in our loyalty. As the film ended, people applauded and cheered, led by party elders and Youths United, some with real fervour, others because they knew they must. We were told to go on our way in peace. Tom and I hadn't spent the whole event side by side, as we tended to do at these occasions. We went our separate ways on arrival, but met up here and there throughout the day for a little chat. He rejoined me as we were about to leave the main field, but as we were about to exit, we were stopped by one of Bullock's men. He said that I must be looking forward to the return of my sister. I nodded and smiled. He then informed me that she would be dropped off at my address early tomorrow morning. This young chap said I should have a day off from my allotment duty so I could greet her on her return. I was informed that Bullock himself would be there as part of the handover. I thanked this lieutenant for informing me of the situation. Tom and I walked away slowly. My mind was abuzz as we walked back into town in a cluster of faces. Finally, Tom and I had a moment alone. We said our goodbyes as the sun set, and he let me know that he would be there for me whatever happened. A wonderful man is my Tom. Mother and I thought they would bring her by car, but no. Bullock, accompanied by a single guard, walked Brawner to our door. We saw them coming from the bottom of our street. We stood behind the door awaiting a knock. We could hear some whispering. Then came 4 loud raps. I opened up, and there she was stood, in front of the 2 men in party uniform. This was not the young woman I remembered. We were given little time to prepare for this. I tried not to allow myself to run away with visions or notions of the woman my sister had become in captivity. However, one is only human. What did it matter now? Before me stood a drab-looking female with short hair and sunken eyes. Her skin was pale and her lips looked drained. Bullock began to speak. I understand this must be a very trying time, and no doubt you'll want some privacy to get reacquainted. Rest assured that Brawner's recent progress has been very pleasing, so I'm reliably informed. I'm sure she'll want to fill you folks in on the details. All right then, my colleague and I will be on our way. Shane, Mrs. Fairbairn, a good day to you. All the very best to your family. With that, Bullock and his guard withdrew, leaving the 3 of us on the doorstep. Brawner had not made eye contact with anyone all the time Bullock and his man were present, but now she fixed her gaze on me. A smile slowly began to creep across the woman's face. I moved forward to embrace her. I could feel her heart racing, as mine was. She was smaller and thinner than I remembered her to be. She wasn't emaciated, but she seemed quite weak. Mum began to weep softly. Seeing this, Brawner moved to comfort her, whispering what sounded like, "I'm back now, it's all right," in Mum's ear. We all moved inside. I sat in Dad's old chair, while Mum and Brawner sat on the sofa, arm in arm. We all shared a powerful silence as we allowed the profundity of the reunion to sink in. Brawner held Mum and stared at me. Even though she had changed significantly in appearance, the emerald green eyes remained. She coughed a little before engaging me. "You've changed a fair bit, Shane, lad. You're looking well." I smiled a little, but found it hard to speak. She continued, "I never stopped thinking about you 2, and poor old Dad, of course. Can't get back lost time." Brawner's voice was weak and strained. Mum started up. "It's just wonderful. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful blessing that you're here with us now, my girl. Thank the good Lord, we're all here together now." It was rare to hear Mother speak in this way. The occasion, the emotions of this moment were clearly affecting her behaviour, which was understandable. I myself was finding it difficult to hold it together. Brawner made a gesture for me to come and join them on the sofa. I sat next to my sister and took her hand in mine. She put her head on my shoulder and exhaled deeply. Some time passed in silence before I summoned up the will to ask my question. "What did they do to you, Brawner?" She didn't look at me. In fact, she took her head off my shoulder and moved it to Mum's. My dear sibling then answered in a hushed tone. "They beat me, they mocked me, then they isolated me. All of this broke my spirit. They worked me hard and fed me gruel and lies year after year. I wished for death many a night in there, as we surely all did. At least those of us who stayed sane hoped for an end to it all. They made us children again. The programs they ran were designed to infantilize us. Cycles of daily humiliation kept us in our place. She had to stop talking as her voice strained. She coughed again and tried to clear her throat. I held her hand more tightly than before and said, "They couldn't have broken you completely. If they had, there would be nothing left of you. I can see you, Bran. Look at me. I can still see the fire. They didn't put it out." She was now looking at me with what looked like a sympathetic expression. She seemed very tired, but at the same time happy. She asked me if I'd found a woman. Mum decided to take it upon herself to interrupt the awkward moment by reaching for some very old photo albums. We spent the rest of the morning looking at our former selves and indulging in a trip down memory lane.